Today, Matt Walsh Show. For decades, Big Pharma has been pushing drugs onto the public without having any idea about the side effects and downstream consequences. Trump is now calling for accountability over COVID drugs, but a new study shows again that we need to be having a similar conversation about birth control pills. Also, the longer that Jasmine Crockett is in office, the more she loses her ability to speak proper English. It's a very strange phenomenon. And Donald Trump calls out a contractor who did shoddy work at the White House. Is this petty or totally justified, or both? And a new article asks the question, why did vegans lose? I think I know the answer. We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. When was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know that my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to prevent veteran suicide? But when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of high-speed data is just $35 a month with mobile hotspot. I enjoy using Pure Talk for my work here at the DailyWire. It's fast, it's reliable, and it's stable. It's time to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. But if you need another reason, something you can really brag about, Pure Talk is the only wireless company that gives you a 1-year free membership to DailyWire Plus when you go to puretalk.com/Walsh. Again, choosing a qualified plan at puretalk.com/Walsh and relish your free 1-year membership to DailyWire Plus. Pure Talk, wireless worth bragging about. Here's a very unsettling and bizarre criminal case you almost certainly haven't heard of, even though it should have been national news at the time. In 2021, an 18-year-old named Cora Vides was a senior at Laguna Blanca School. And on Valentine's Day, Cora invited a longtime friend over to her family's house. Everything was normal, right up until Cora declared out of nowhere that she was bisexual. And then Cora told her friend to close her eyes, supposedly so that she could demonstrate a new technique for meditation. But it was all a ruse, and after counting to 3, Cora suddenly began stabbing her friend in the neck. Now, the victim managed to escape, although she nearly bled to death in the hospital. Her lung had collapsed. She needed surgery to reconstruct her larynx. At no point did she have any idea why her friend had just tried to kill her. All she knew was that Cora had snapped, entered some kind of dissociative state, and ambushed her violently. Now, at trial, Cora was found guilty of attempted first-degree murder, but the jury also found that Cora was insane at the time of the attack, meaning that she might not face any prison time at all. She'll spend a few months in a psychiatric hospital instead, because that's how the legal system works in California. In reaching that decision, the jury considered Cora's claim that she was non-binary, as well as the fact that she had been diagnosed with various mental health conditions. But maybe the most important piece of evidence concerned a hormonal birth control pill that Cora had been taking. Quoting from the Santa Barbara Independent, defense attorney Robert Sanger said a new birth control medication Cora Vides was taking was also known to cause significant side effects, including depression. Cora's older sister, Maya, testified that a month before the stabbing, Cora told her that she was cutting herself. Maya responded that she'd also struggled with self-harm and suggested that Cora try the same oral contraceptive that she'd been prescribed, which helped balance her hormones. Cora did so, but complained to friends that the pills made her feel even more off. Now, it wasn't just the defense attorneys who made this claim. Dr. Brandon Yakush, a court-appointed forensic psychologist, asserted that the new birth control medication was, quote, a major factor in how her depression got worse during that time. In other words, because this person took hormonal birth control, she degraded her already fragile mental state even further. But the doctor added that, as far as he knew, there wasn't much literature on birth control's ability to affect the mind on a deeper level beyond causing depression. This is one of the reasons that you rarely, if ever, hear about cases like Cora's. Now, yes, media outlets don't like running stories that are critical of the pharmaceutical industry because Big Pharma buys more advertisements than anybody else. And we all know, as we discussed last week, that the non-binary / transgender angle of this story also guaranteed that nobody would talk about it. But it's also true when you look at scientific research that there isn't a lot of data about hormonal birth control medication. They've been mass prescribed without much investigation into the possible side effects. And this is something we talk about a lot with the pharmaceutical industry because we see this a lot in the pharmaceutical industry, if you haven't noticed. It was the same story with ADHD drugs and SSRIs and Alzheimer's medications, the COVID shot, Ozempic, even over-the-counter decongestants, and so on. In every one of these cases, miraculous drugs, supposedly, have been marketed and widely distributed. And then many years or even decades later, we finally get to see some hard evidence. And that hard evidence, at a minimum, dramatically changes the narrative that Big Pharma has constructed around a particular drug. And that moment is now arriving for hormonal birth control. For generations now, women who take these medications have reported psychiatric side effects, but the specific nature of those side effects beyond mood swings and depression hasn't been spelled out very clearly in medical literature, at least not often. And that's why a new study from researchers at Rice University in Texas, published in the journal Hormones and Behavior, has been getting some attention. In short, the researchers found that hormonal contraceptives affect emotional processing and memory. And these effects haven't been disclosed to any of the tens of millions of women who are currently taking these drugs, nor has anyone considered the broader implications of these side effects, which are obviously significant. So to run this experiment, the researchers at Rice showed positive, negative, and neutral images to two groups, the control group that wasn't taking hormonal birth control and another group that was. And then in addition to administering a memory test, the researchers instructed their test subjects to apply a variety of emotion regulation strategies, including distancing, reinterpretation, and immersion. Now, in case you're not up on the lingo, psychological distancing involves, quote, taking an objective third-person perspective to an emotional event, while reinterpretation involves reframing or imagining a better outcome in the context of the emotional event. And meanwhile, immersion means deeply engaging with the aspects of an emotional event to increased effect, rather positive, either positive or negative. So anyway, this is all, a lot of meaningless psychobabble, but the basic idea is that they told the test subjects to work on their feelings. And the end result, according to Rice, is that, quote, women on hormonal contraceptives showed stronger emotional reactions compared to naturally cycling women. When they used strategies like distancing or reinterpretation, they remembered fewer details of negative events, though their general memory remained intact. In other words, they could recall the overall event, but not all the specifics. And the last part is especially interesting. Whatever you make of this stuff about immersion and psychological distancing and whatever else, the impact of hormonal contraceptives on memory has implications that nobody ever talks about. What happens when millions of women become more forgetful and more emotional at the same time? And this happens at scale with millions of women at the same time. Do these women vote differently? Are their relationships more unstable as a result? Being very forgetful and overly emotional, not a great recipe for relationships. Now, over at Rice University, they're not concerned, apparently, with any of these possibilities. Instead, their researchers described the potential for large-scale memory loss as, quote, exciting, saying that it might help women forget about traumatic, unhappy experiences. Now, this is a logic that would not fly in any other environment. Imagine if you're an engineer who makes passenger airplanes and you suddenly discover that one of your safety features actually has a totally unexpected side effect. And it could be good, could be bad. You're not entirely sure. Most likely in that case, your first response will be to shut everything down until you figure out exactly what the risks are and what other risks there might be that you don't know about. It should be a response anyway. If Boeing had done that, then there's a good chance that their MAX jets wouldn't have crashed on two separate occasions. But in medicine, the discovery of unintended side effects that directly impact the human brain, the mind, we're told that that's really exciting, which is complete nonsense. It's spin masquerading as science. In reality, what these researchers have discovered is additional evidence that hormonal birth control has effects on the brain that no one, including the self-described experts, actually understand. And this evidence is continuing to pile up year after year. In 2023, for example, researchers in Montreal writing for the journal Frontiers in Endocrinology discovered evidence that hormonal contraceptives shrink a portion of the prefrontal cortex, specifically the portion of the prefrontal cortex that's involved in controlling emotions, maintaining self-control, making decisions, and handling fear. This part of the brain is called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Quote, we recruited healthy adults aged 23 to 35 who identified as women currently using or having used oral contraceptives, as well as women who never used any oral hormonal contraceptives. Compared to men, only current users of hormonal contraceptives showed a thinner ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So I'll say that again because I'm stumbling over the harder words, but only current users showed a thinner ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So the current users of the drug are the only ones that had this thinner part of the brain. Now, admittedly, I don't understand what half of those words mean, but the takeaway is still pretty clear. These drugs, at least while women are taking them, have an observable effect on a critical area of the brain. And that's not a small thing. Even the best neurologist in the world doesn't have a complete understanding of how the brain works. That's what makes neurology a cutting-edge competitive field of medicine, and it's also what makes hormonal birth control a far more uncertain and dangerous proposition than most women realize. Again, you don't need to take my word for any of this. Writing in the European Journal of Neuroscience a year later, the same researchers from Montreal observed that oral contraceptives are, quote, generally used for years and often initiated during adolescence, a sensitive period where certain brain regions involved in the fear circuitry are still undergoing important reorganization. They stated that it's unknown whether these contraceptives cause, quote, long-lasting changes in the fear circuitry. So they ran the following experiment to try to figure that out. Quote, we collected structural MRI data in 98 healthy adult women and extracted gray matter volumes and cortical thickness of key regions of the fear circuitry. Among women who initiated oral contraceptives earlier in adolescence, a short duration of use was associated with smaller hippocampal gray matter volumes and thicker ventromedial prefrontal cortex compared to a longer duration of use. For both gray matter volumes and cortical thickness of the right ventromedial prefrontal cortex, women with an early oral contraceptive onset had more gray matter at a short duration of use than those with a later onset. Our results suggest that oral contraceptives use earlier in adolescence may induce lasting effects on structures related to fear learning and its regulation. These findings support further investigation into the timing of oral contraceptive use to better comprehend how it could disrupt normal brain development processes. Close quote. Well, that's an understatement. The fact that these contraceptives can impact the size of the prefrontal cortex, according to these researchers, supports further investigation. Yeah, you think? I mean, it would have been nice if this investigation had commenced before tens of millions of women were given these drugs, which function by tricking their bodies into acting like they're pregnant. This is the conversation that we should have had at any point in the past half century, but I guess we're supposed to conclude that, it's better late than never. I don't know. Again, the impact on society at large is completely ignored. I mean, what happens when we break the fear response in the brains of millions of women? If we did something like that, could it explain perhaps why so many American women are petrified of climate change or the plight of criminal illegal aliens, the prospect of losing the right to kill their children, the fate of a tiny country in Eastern Europe that they can't even locate on a map? If they don't have the correct fear response, does that explain why you have a lot of liberal women who aren't nearly as concerned about like the things in their everyday life they should be concerned about, like crime? Again, criminal illegals coming into your community. There's like a disconnect with a lot of female voters on that. Could this explain part of that? Could it explain why, if only women could vote, then Kamala Harris would have won all 50 states? Could there be a connection there? And while we're at it, what about the study published in the Journal of Computational Biology showing that doses of hormonal birth control could be reduced by more than 90% while remaining effective? And what about the study from Denmark showing that birth control pills affect the body's ability to regulate stress? Let's put a quote from one of those researchers on the screen. This is a man named Michael Winterdahl. And here's what he said, quote, our results are really important because they indicate that people who use birth control pills do not experience the same reduced stress hormone levels in connection with social activity as people who do not use the pill. And then there's the possibility that birth control affects the kinds of men that women want to be around. In fact, we know that there's tons of studies about this, and this is obviously true. After all, in normal circumstances, male testosterone is reduced when they're around pregnant women. And if these drugs are making most women seem pregnant, then it stands to reason that men around them will have lower testosterone. And that explains the dating scene in most of California, Oregon, New York, Virginia, so on. And we could talk for the next month about studies like this, most of which are never discussed on the national news. No matter where you stand on the issue in general, you have to admit that there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of red flags that are mostly just being ignored. No one in any position of authority is interested in addressing any of these questions or the issue of fraudulent medicine more generally. And that said, there are some signs that there could be changes in the near future if you're the optimistic type. The other day, as you might have seen, Donald Trump suggested that he's going to push for more accountability in this particular domain of medicine and Big Pharma. Here's part of what he wrote, quote, "It is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think that they're a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree. With the CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer and I want it now. I have been shown information from Pfizer and others that is extraordinary, but they never seem to show the results to the public. Why not?" Now, this is obviously not a post about birth control, but it gets at the same kind of underlying question, which needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. The largest pharmaceutical companies in the country have been hiding data or outright lying about it for a long time now. Just in case you've forgotten just how overt and shameless this propaganda was during COVID, here's a couple of clips from just a few years ago in which Pfizer reports that its vaccine is 100% effective for children. And then CNN and MSNBC dutifully repeat that talking point. Watch.
And today, Pfizer is out with potentially incredible news for parents and children. The drug company released the first findings from its child vaccine study and found it's both safe, and here is the big headline here, 100% effective in preventing COVID-19 in kids ages 12 to 15. We should note that these are early findings and have not yet been peer reviewed, so stay tuned for that.
We do have some breaking news. Drug maker Pfizer just announcing the results of its vaccine trial for adolescents. It says its coronavirus shot was 100% effective at preventing infection and sickness among 12 to 15-year-olds. This could be a major game changer for reopening schools across America.
Well, we all know how that turned out. Eventually, we learned the truth about the COVID shot, and by that point, for millions of Americans, it was already too late. And in the same way today, we're now finding out very slowly, piece by piece, the truth about the various effects of hormonal contraceptives on the brain. Now, this is not how science is supposed to work. It's not how public health is supposed to work, but it's the way things operate at the moment. And before you or someone you know takes one of these pills or any other pill that's handed to you by a doctor with the promise of correcting some alleged deficiency in the human condition, you have to recognize this simple fact. None of the people involved in the production or distribution of that drug really have any idea what it will do to you, especially if it affects your brain and your mind. They have no clue how that happens or why or what the ultimate effect will be. And if they claim they know, they're lying. But like the friend of Cora Avides in Santa Barbara, you might nevertheless find out one day in a very painful and tragic manner exactly what those consequences will be. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Nearly half of American adults say they would suffer financial hardship within 6 months if they lost their primary income earner. As a father and husband, I know how important it is to protect my family's financial future if the worst were to happen. That's where Policy Genius comes in. Policy Genius takes the complexity out of life insurance, making it easy to find and purchase coverage that ensures your loved ones have the security they need if something happens to you. Whether it's covering everyday expenses, paying off debt, or providing funds they can invest for long-term growth, the right policy gives you peace of mind. With Policy Genius, you can quickly compare quotes from leading insurers to find coverage that works for both you and your family's needs and your budget. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. It's an easy way to protect the people you love and feel good about the future. As the country's leading online insurance marketplace, Policy Genius simplifies the life insurance process by letting you compare quotes from America's top insurers with just a few clicks to find the lowest price. Their team of licensed agents will walk you through everything step by step, answering questions, handling paperwork, and advocating for you throughout the process so you can make informed decisions about the future and secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com to compare free life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. If you're still stressed about back taxes, maybe you missed the April deadline or your books are a mess, don't wait any longer than you already have. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% per month, up to 25% just for not filing. But there's help. Tax Network USA can take the burden off your shoulders and stop the spiral before it gets worse. They've helped thousands of Americans, whether you're an employee, a small business owner, or haven't filed in years. Messy books, no problem. They've seen it all and know exactly how to clean it up. With direct access to powerful IRS programs and expert negotiators on your side, Tax Network USA knows how to win. You get a free consultation, and if you qualify, they may even be able to reduce or eliminate what you owe. More importantly, they'll help protect you from wage garnishments or bank levies. So don't wait for the next IRS letter. Call 800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh to talk to a real expert at Tax Network USA. Take the pressure off. Let Tax Network USA handle your tax issues. Let's start off the week, an abbreviated week, by checking in with our dear friend Jasmine Crockett. What is she up to these days? What is she thinking about right now? I know that's what you're wondering. That's what I was wondering. Well, the answer is not much. The inside of Jasmine's head is a dark and hollow cavern. It's an empty tunnel going nowhere, and that is very obvious when you hear her speak. And yet it's this really strange phenomenon where the longer that Jasmine Crockett spends in public office, the dumber she sounds. You know, based on the way she speaks and the things she says, it appears that she's losing brain cells at a really alarming rate. I mean, she'll be Joe Biden in a matter of a couple of months at this point. I don't know how this is happening. I don't know if she's going home and just like banging her head against a brick wall 14 times before she goes to bed every night. I don't know if that's part of her nightly routine. I'm not sure. But in any case, this is what she sounds like now. Listen to this.
Maybe because these people, they are crazy because they always talk about how Christian they is. Yeah, I don't know how many of them on that side are getting divorced because they getting caught up sleeping with their co-workers, staffers, interns, all the things. Yeah, you ain't got to believe me. Just go Google. You'll find some of it. I'm telling you. And the wives is being messy and petty. They putting it in the divorce. I'm like, ooh, that's got to be true because your lawyer would know that they going to lose it if they...
Baby, because these people, they are crazy. These people, with the D there, because they always talking about how Christian they is. This is a sitting member of the United States House of Representatives. How Christian they is. They always talking about how Christian they is. This is a member of the United States. This is a congresswoman, in case you forgot. This is a person who goes to work in the sacred halls of Congress. At least the halls they told us were sacred on January 6th. Remember, we heard all about how sacred everything is? And I'll say this, Jasmine Crockett simply existing as a congresswoman is a greater attack on Congress and on the dignity of our system of government than January 6th ever was. Okay, Jasmine Crockett's whole political career is like a million January 6s every day. Every day she goes to work, it's a January 6th times a million. Nobody who speaks like this should be allowed to hold a seat in Congress. It just should not be allowed. If you can't speak basic English, not even because you're fluent in another language. I mean, that also shouldn't be allowed. If you can't speak English because you're fluent in another language, because it's not, if you can't speak English because it's not your first language, you should not be allowed in Congress. Even worse, though, is if you don't speak another language, English is your only language, and you still can't speak it. You're not fluent in the one language that you allegedly speak. So you're not bilingual, you're no lingual. You're zero lingual. You have no lingual at all. You can't speak. You're not fit for Congress at that point. And that shouldn't be controversial to say. Now, You'll hear it claimed that she can speak English, that this ghetto act is just a put on, she's pretending. And that may be true, but whatever the reason behind it, if you speak like this, you should not be allowed to serve in public office at any level. And I know that when I say this, I'll be accused of being racist. I was making fun of Jasmine Crockett clip on X yesterday, and I had a bunch of people saying, "Oh, now you're just being openly racist, making fun of." Well, this has nothing to do with race. To be very clear, I think that any person who can't speak proper English, regardless of race, should not be allowed to hold public office in this country. If we want to be a serious country run by adults, then any human who is a citizen of this country cannot speak proper English should not be allowed. I don't care, black or white, doesn't matter to me. Speaking our own language fluently and coherently should be a prerequisite for holding public office, white or black. This is not about having an accent or even using slang. Okay, this is about not speaking English. Day is how Christian day is. That's not English. I'm sorry, that's not how English is spoken. English is an actual language, and that's not English. That is not actually English. And needless to say at this point, because you know my take on the right to vote, which is that I'm not a big fan of it. For most people, I'm not a big fan of the right to vote for most people. I think most people should not have the right to vote. So it doesn't even need to be repeated at this point, but I will, that anyone who would vote for a woman like this should not have the right to vote anymore. You are not fit to exercise that right. You're not fit to exercise the right of self-determination if you would vote for Jasmine Crockett. This country doesn't work. No country works at all. Nothing works so long as you insist on giving equal say to the sorts of people who would vote for Jasmine Crockett. The sort of person who would see that clip that we just played and go, yeah, that's what I want. I'm going to vote for that person. I want that person representing me in Congress. Yeah, she's the one. Of all the possible people, let's have her. Anyone who would say that should have the right to vote. And everything starts to make more sense when you realize this, when you realize and accept that it's just impossible to have a functioning country when you allow the dumbest, most gullible, most hopelessly deluded and stupefied morons to vote. It doesn't work. Like it just doesn't work. You can't do that. You cannot have a functioning country that way. So it's almost like all of our debates, political debates, are sort of pointless as long as we're allowing the dumbest, most clueless people to steer the ship. Nothing can work. And which is why you would never do this in any other context. You would never leave any other important decision to Jasmine Crockett or a Jasmine Crockett voter. I mean, if you bought a piece of property and you needed to build a house on it, you wouldn't take a poll of the general population to figure out the design and blueprints of your house. If you wanted to get the engine fixed in your car, again, you wouldn't just take a general poll, like no qualifications or anything. I want to know, I need to get my car fixed. I'll stop 1,000 random people on the street. Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter, no qualifications, just 1,000 random people. And whatever they say I should do to my car, I'll do that to the car. You would never do that. It's crazy. You would never do that. Nothing can work that way. You cannot have a functioning anything if it works that way. There is no important decision in your life, not a single one, that you would leave up to a vote of just like the general public with no qualifications and with weighing everyone's voice the same. And yet we think it's possible to maintain a country this way? It's not. It's just not. Which is why it was never actually supposed to work this way. It was never supposed to be that just like, yeah, everyone gets a say. The right to vote is this sacred right that we just give to anyone at all. Don't have to be citizens either, like just anyone. Yeah, if you're here, you get a say. Doesn't matter if you're a citizen, doesn't matter, increasingly it's like they won't even matter how old you are. They want to drop the voting age. Doesn't matter if you are literate. Doesn't matter if you have a job. Doesn't matter if you have any stake, any skin in the game whatsoever. Doesn't matter if you're a functioning person. Doesn't matter if you have any clue what's happening in the world. Doesn't matter if you even know what system of government this is. Doesn't matter if you can name the branches of government. Doesn't matter if you can even name who the vice president is. None of that matters. Just everyone. Yeah, everyone has a say. Throw your vote in the hat here, and we'll figure out. Yeah, we'll whatever all these people say, that's what we'll do. Doesn't work. It obviously doesn't work. It cannot work. So much of what we're dealing with in this country is just the inevitable result of this insane system that is, by the way, again, very new. This is not ever how it's actually supposed to work. Where there are no qualifications to vote whatsoever. Okay, that's anyone who acts like that's like it's it's like self-evident that this is how voting is supposed to be. Well, of course there should be no qualifications. Everyone should just vote. Anyone who acts like that, it's like that's well, these are the people that shouldn't be allowed to vote. They're just incredibly stupid. Okay. It should not be possible for someone like Jasmine Crockett to get into office. When you see Jasmine, you watch that clip and you see Jasmine Crockett and he's like, okay, well, she was elected. Well, we got a major systemic problem. There's a major problem that it's even possible for someone like this to hold office. But I've been beating this drum forever. It's unfortunately, it's like, I don't know how you fix it because, I understand as a politician, it's very hard. Well, the politicians are not interested in, most of them are not interested in shrinking the voting base. They want a bunch of morons to vote because obviously if you're a politician, it works better for you. There's a lot less accountability when morons are voting. But even if there was a politician that had the integrity to want to change the system, that's a hard pitch to the voters, is to come out and say, "Hey, I think like a huge number of you shouldn't have a say anymore." And so I think that's where we want to. I think that's where we want to head. That's a tough pitch. I understand that, but someone's got to make it because this just isn't working. All right, New York Post has this. President Trump called out a stupid White House subcontractor Saturday who says damaged stonework in the Rose Garden during a renovation, who he says damaged stonework in the Rose Garden during a renovation to the outdoor area. The commander-in-chief shared security camera footage of the alleged incident on Truth Social, calling foul on workers who he says caused a huge dash in custom stonework in the vaunted garden. Trump wrote, "Surfaces are very important to me as a builder, as everyone knows. The Rose Garden is completed and far more beautiful than anyone ever had in mind when it was conceived of decades ago. 3 days ago, while admiring the stonework, I happened to notice a huge gash in the limestone that extends more than 25 yards. It was a deep and nasty gash in the stonework. In the post, Trump shared security footage of the stupid people employed by an unnamed subcontractor who cracked the stonework while transporting a shrubbery on a steel cart. Trump also blasted the worker's boss, who was watching in sunglasses, as the beautiful stone was cracked. I love and respect great workers and contractors, but something like this should never happen. Now I'll replace the stone, charge the contractor, and never let that contractor work at the White House again. We caught them cold. Make America great again." So Donald Trump sent out this post publicly shaming a contractor who did shoddy work. And a lot of people thought that this was very petty and inappropriate and beneath the dignity of the office. But I have to tell you, I kind of love it. I'm sorry, but I just do. I kind of love it. It might actually be all of those things. It might be petty, inappropriate, and beneath the dignity of the office, but I still love it. And a lot of other people also loved it. And you know what? You know why that is? It's because we're all just tired of the terrible service that we get everywhere. This awful half-assed work that's done everywhere. We're tired of it. It's an epidemic. It really is. Not just with contractors, although certainly with contractors too. We've hired many contractors over the years at my house, and in our experience, they almost always go over budget. They almost always take longer than they said they'd take. And often, not always, certainly, but often the final product just isn't satisfactory. That's why contractors rank at the top or near the top in terms of, for categories for consumer complaints. And that's true year after year. Like 40% of homeowners are dissatisfied with the work that their contractors do. I saw another poll that said 25% of homeowners regret hiring their contractor, which is a very high number, still probably a conservative estimate. So it's a big problem, but it goes well beyond that industry. This is a problem that you find everywhere. Laziness, sloppiness, bad service. We know how bad things are in the customer service and food service worlds. It's just god awful. In fact, I just had an experience the other day. I took my kids out to a restaurant, and the food took 90 minutes to come out. And after because I'm you'd be surprised. I'm surprisingly patient in these kinds of situations. A lot of other kinds of situations, I'm not so patient. But in this kind of situation where it's, with like a certain, at a restaurant and it's busy and I can look around and other people are taking forever for their food also. So, and everyone else is already complaining. So I kind of feel like, why do I need to chime in and say, excuse me, I'd also like to complain. But after about 80 minutes, I was like, okay, well, this has been too long. And so I said to the waitress, I just said, hey, it's been almost an hour and a half. And the food's not out yet. And she said, this was her response. This is what she said. Yeah. That was it. Just, yeah. There was no sorry, no explanation, nothing. No offer to make it right. Hey, we'll take the app off and we'll give you a free dessert or whatever. None of that. Now later, a manager came out and did do that, but with the waitress, it was just, hey, the food's we were waiting 90 minutes. Yeah. Then she walked away. So, and you hardly get mad about it these days because this is what you're used to. This service is awful. It's just so bad everywhere you go. And I like the fact that Donald Trump had enough of it and he took action. And I sort of find myself living vicariously through him on this point because I would never do that. I would never publicly shame someone who provided bad service. Even now, I'm not saying the name of the restaurant. I'm not going to do that. I don't have that in me. I'd feel bad. I just feel bad doing that. In fact, I'm ashamed to say this is pathetic, but even after that bad service, I still gave a tip because I just feel bad. I feel bad if I don't. In so many other contexts, I can be a hard ass, but in this situation, I'm like, all right, I'll just give the tip. I feel bad about it. But I respect the fact that Trump doesn't. Trump is the president of the United States, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to put this video out I'm going to shame this person in front of the entire world. I'm going to shame them on a global level for this terrible service they provided. And I couldn't do it, but I respect that Trump did. I'm glad he's doing it. There needs to be an uprising of sorts against the terrible service everywhere, I would say. Greta Thunberg set sail over the weekend for Gaza again, and she was bringing aid into Gaza on a flotilla. And here she is giving a speech before she sets sail. Listen.
But this story is also about a global uprising, about how people are stepping up when our governments fail to do so. For every politician that is fueling the genocide, further environmental and climate destruction, and further colonization and fascism, there will be people escalating the resistance against that.
So it appears that Greta went to the hair salon and told the lady at the salon to make her look exactly like the bad guy from No Country for Old Men. She wanted that Anton Chigurh hairdo for some reason. Either that or Jeff Daniels in Dumb and Dumber was maybe her inspiration. I'm not sure. But we could spend all day trying to figure out why her hair looks like that. It is kind of mind-boggling. I'm not one to normally notice those sorts of things, but it is like, why would you do that? and you know that you're a publicity whore, and so you're going to be on camera. You know, why did you make your hair look like that? I don't get it. But we won't spend a lot of time on that. Let's move on from that. Here's the update from the New York Post. Greta Thunberg's aid flotilla was forced to turn back to port after hitting stormy weather just hours into its journey. The 22-year-old eco warrior is one of 20 boats that set off from Gaza from Barcelona on Sunday on what they call the largest solidarity mission in history, with Israel threatening to arrest her in harsh terrorist-level conditions. But then she turned around. So there you go. They made a big dramatic show of sailing into Gaza, but then turned back after about 20 minutes. And that was that. And there's no surprise there, because obviously this is all for show. If she actually cared about getting aid into Gaza, you know, she would just do it. I mean, if you claim that Gaza needs aid and that they're being genocided right now, then why would you call the press and give a big speech and announce it? And then say, hey, everybody, we're getting on this big flotilla here. We're going to bring some aid in. Why would you do that? You set off with trumpets blaring. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Wouldn't you just sail there under the cover of darkness and try to be as discreet as you possibly can be and alert nobody about the operation until maybe after it's completed? That's what you would do if you were not a scam artist like Greta Thunberg, who just jumps from one hot topic to another. And that's the funny thing about Greta Thunberg, because she has completely bailed, as many people have noticed. I'm certainly not the only person to remark on this. She's completely bailed on the climate hoax. Have you noticed that? She just moved on from that, and now she's joined the Palestinian resistance. But the problem is, even if you agree with her about the Israel-Palestine issue, how is that commanding any of her attention? Why waste so much time on the plight of Gaza when the entire world hangs on the brink of destruction because of climate change? I mean, even if you succeed in freeing Palestine, whatever that would mean, aren't all the Palestinians going to die anyway because of climate change? Isn't that, if you claim there's some kind of global catastrophe that's about to destroy the lives of billions of people, it really makes no sense to pivot from that to talk about anything else. And that is, of course, unless you never believed any of that climate change stuff to begin with, if it was all nonsense, if it was all a scam, or maybe she did believe it at one point, but has now realized that it was a lie, but instead of admitting that, she just pivots to the next big cause. And now she folds the climate stuff into this broader narrative, which actually is worse. That's in some ways worse than just simply dropping the climate change narrative outright. Instead, she folds it into this broader narrative, as if global apocalypse is merely one facet of a larger issue. So in the speech we just heard, she blames unnamed politicians for fueling genocide, environmental destruction, fascism, and colonization. So she just kind of throws it all in. One big, mushy, intersectional stew. But again, I ask, why are you worried about fascism and colonization if the entire world is about to end? How could the destruction of the planet be just one threat alongside fascism and colonization? That's like if a guy is drowning in the ocean and you like stand on the shore and say, well, it seems like this guy has really three problems. High cholesterol, skin cancer, and he's drowning. No, I would think that third thing is really the only thing that would matter in that moment. The other two aren't going to have a chance to kill him if he drowns in the next 30 seconds. And yet Greta Thunberg claims that the entire world is drowning. The entire world is on the verge of certain death. But here she is focused on Gaza and the problem of fascism and colonization. And that's because it's all a scam. I mean, all this stuff is a scam, and these people don't believe any of it. They don't care about any of it. And it's just one big con. And Greta Thunberg has been one of the preeminent con artists on the globe, really, for a long time. So it's nice to see that is continuing. If you've been living on credit cards just to cover groceries, gas, and bills, you know those interest rates are brutal. Why keep paying 20% or more to the banks when you could call my friends at American Financing? They have the mortgage rates in the fives, and They're showing people every day how to keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket and out of the hands of credit card companies. Right now, American Financing is helping homeowners save an average of $800 a month by using their home equity to wipe out high-interest debt with no upfront fees, no obligation, and just a 10-minute call to a salary-based mortgage consultant. And here's the kicker. If you start today, you could delay 2 mortgage payments, putting even more cash in your hands right away. Don't wait. Call American Financing now, 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711, or visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh. After 4 years, countless arguments destroyed, and millions of liberals triggered, Ben Shapiro returns to do something that he's obnoxiously good at. He's written a new book. The result is Lions and Scavengers, the true story of America and her critics. Let's be clear, this isn't just another book release. This is one of the biggest books of the fall, the kind of book that goes straight to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, which is especially fun because it means that Times has to put Ben Shapiro's name in bold letters again. It's now available everywhere, Amazon, Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, but we've made it easy. All the links are in one place at dailywire.com/Ben. And if you want a signed copy from Ben himself, and honestly, who doesn't, that's only at the Daily Wire shop. Order your copy today at dailywire.com/Ben. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. Today for our daily cancellation, we have an article in the Financial Times from a vegan writer by the name of Henry Mance. Henry is trying to deal with a question that for him is quite woeful and tragic. For the rest of us, it's cause for celebration, or at least maybe laughter. The headline, Why the Vegans Lost. And as you can see, the headline is accompanied by a little cartoon of a balding man on a park bench cuddling with a bottle of milk while a carton of oat milk looks on, sad and dejected, because apparently this anthropomorphized carton of oat milk wants to have its insides poured out and consumed by the bald guy, which is, raises all kinds of strange psychological questions that we're not going to get into. But the question of concern is the one in the title. Why did veganism lose? Even the vegans are now willing to admit that they lost the battle. Veganism failed. Nobody wants to be vegan. Nobody likes vegans. Why is that? Henry Mance of the Financial Times shares his theory of the case, and if you were expecting even an ounce of self-awareness or serious self-reflection here, well, then you apparently don't know vegans. Reading on, a few weeks ago, I sat next to a former England footballer at lunch. She had suffered a serious ankle injury in her early 30s. After researching how to recover, she decided to turn vegan. Medical staff were skeptical until her statistics proved better than ever. Today, her only regret is not changing diet sooner. Such stories have become rarer. Veganism was once the biggest food trend. Now the zeitgeist is elsewhere. Google searches for the word vegan rose steadily after 2010, peaked in early 2020, and have dropped since. Sales of Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, which make arguably the best vegan burgers, are falling too. 11 Madison Park, the high-end New York restaurant, which went plant-based after COVID-19, is reintroducing meat to its menu. One high-profile vegan crypto entrepreneur, Sam Bankman-Fried, is in jail. Another, New York Mayor Eric Adams, turned out to like eating at fish restaurants. What went wrong? Actually, this understates the problem for veganism. Sales for plant-based alternatives aren't just falling. In fact, reports suggested that the company Beyond Meat is going bankrupt. Now, they've since denied those reports, but the fact remains that things are going very poorly in the world of disgusting plant mush shaped to look like delicious meat products. Why are they going poorly, though? The question was just posed, what went wrong? Well, the writer spends precisely one sentence on the fact that vegan food products perform poorly in blind taste tests. Then he moves on from that and starts complaining about fickle food trends and the fact that, quote, governments never intervened to help plant-based diets. Well, that really gives the game away, doesn't it? Vegans knew that they could never entice us to drink liquefied nut juice when real milk is readily available. They knew that we would never be tempted to eat pink plant slime instead of actual ground beef, so they hoped that governments would intervene and just jam their vegan sludge down our throats at gunpoint, which tells you everything you need to know. And the thing is, even if that had happened, it still wouldn't have worked. Most of us would rather die than eat a tofu chicken breast. Consuming a vegan meal is a fate worse than death for most of us. So even if the governments of the world had, as the vegans hoped, rounded us up and put us into vegan concentration camps and served us a diet of cashew milk and vegan sausages, it still would not have been enough to convince any of us to actually eat it. We would all rather starve than put that poison into our mouths. But why are we so opposed to vegan food? Well, Henry Mance of the Financial Times finally settles on the real answer. Quote, even with all the above, the retreat of veganism wouldn't have been possible without another ingredient, the decline in idealism. Not long ago, liberals in particular were prepared to make sacrifices in the hope of a better society. Faced with overwhelming bleakness, COVID, Ukraine, high energy costs, Donald Trump's reelection, Gaza, they've lost faith. They understandably wonder if small changes matter. They want to escape to the things that bring instant joy, meat, cheese, long-haul holidays. Veganism wasn't meant to be like other food fads. It was intended to benefit not just the individual, but society as a whole. Eating less meat would reduce greenhouse gas emissions and animal suffering. The evidence is clear, but right now we can't be bothered. But concerns about climate and animal welfare are the bedrock of veganism, the reasons that will keep people feeling good about eating less meat and that can get governments involved. In Germany, where support for climate action remains strong, sales of plant-based food have kept growing. Elsewhere, vegans will regain the momentum if the public regains a sense of possibility. So that's it. We're not idealistic enough. And we're depressed about Ukraine. We all look at that, at the fake vegan hamburger, and we say, I would eat it, but I'm just so depressed about Ukraine. If not for the fate of Ukraine, I'd have this vegan. That's true. When I go to a restaurant, I say that all the time. I'm looking at the menu, and I always say to the waitress, you got this impossible meat burger here. This is vegan. I would eat it. I would eat it, but this thing with Ukraine, it's so depressing. I need the comfort of real beef to make me feel better about Ukraine. And then also we've lost our sense of possibility. And in a way that's true. We do not believe that it's possible for a vegan alternative to ever taste like anything but steaming hot garbage. And with every new vegan alternative on the market, our lack of faith is further justified because in reality, there are two key reasons why the vegans lost. And it's got nothing to do with anything that was in that article. And the first and biggest reason is simply this. Your food tastes like crap. Your food doesn't even taste like food. It tastes like you're eating random household objects. Vegan cheese is like eating a candle. Tofu is like you ordered something fragile on Amazon and then ate the styrofoam packaging that it came in. Vegan bacon is like if you then ate the cardboard box. Vegan beef tastes like soggy rubber that someone, heated up in a microwave. Vegan chicken tastes like a piece of yoga mat folded up with sawdust inside. It's rancid, nauseating, offensive. Vegan food is so bad that it's upsetting on an emotional level. The last time I tried a vegan product, I got so sad that I almost cried. I didn't, but I almost did. And that would have been an approved reason for a man to cry. That's how bad vegan food is. And that's the main reason that veganism failed. It's a dietary fad, but the diet is so repugnant that its adherents need the government to intervene on their behalf. Okay? That's the problem. The other problem is philosophical. And the philosophical problem is that veganism is morally incoherent. I won't even get into the fact that if you think meat is murder, it makes no sense to sell food that's supposed to look and taste like murder. Like if I wanted to make the point that cannibalism is bad, I wouldn't sell food that's made to look and taste like human flesh. Cannibalism is bad, so try our new human thighs. You'll never believe that you're not consuming an actual human limb. It seems like a bizarre sales pitch if you morally object to the thing that the food is imitating. But more importantly, veganism hinges on the idea that human beings are not superior to animals. They say that we are animals ourselves, no better than any other animals in the animal kingdom, but animals in the animal kingdom eat each other. That's what animals do. The majority of animals on the planet are carnivores. About 30% are herbivores, and those are mostly animals that can survive by eating grass, leaves, vegetables. We cannot survive on that kind of diet. I mean, if you just eat grass, you'll die. If you just eat leaves, you'll die. If you just eat vegetables, you will die. Biologically, human beings are omnivores. So animals that need to eat meat, as we do, eat meat. Like in the animal kingdom, if an animal needs to eat meat, they'll just eat meat. They have no compunction about it. They don't debate the ethics. They kill and they eat. Many animals even start eating their meal before it's all the way dead. This is the way of life. It's how nature works. And if we are but animals ourselves, shouldn't we be a part of this natural process? Isn't that the most organic thing we can do? Is to just be a part of the cycle of life? If we're not superior to animals, how can we be held to a higher moral standard? It makes no sense. Veganism claims that we're superior and not superior at the very same time. We shouldn't eat animals because we are animals just like any other animals, but also we shouldn't eat animals because we are not animals just like any other animal. Which is it? Well, vegans ultimately answer the question the same way that the rest of us do. I mean, that's really what they believe, even if they don't want to say it out loud. They believe that human beings are superior. That's the only way to justify holding us to some kind of elevated and highly unnatural moral code. They expect us to act in a way that is distinct from every other species on the planet because they believe that we are distinct from every other species on the planet. Ultimately, as is so often the case, they went in a big circle and they ended back at a basic biblical truth. Man was made in the image of God and given dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth. But if that's true, then it's all the more reason why we have the moral right to eat animals. Hamburgers don't just taste good, they are also ethically good. And maybe that's why vegan food tastes so horrible. They want it to taste like beef or chicken, but instead it just tastes like moral confusion. And ultimately, that is why vegans are, by their own admission now, today, canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Today on The Ben Shapiro Show, anti-American and pro-Hamas forces hold a giant event in Detroit. India joins Russia and China in a show of strength to counter America, and a federal court strikes down the Trump tariffs. For now. That's today on The Ben Shapiro Show. Give it a listen.